Hello, everybody, and welcome back.
So we are now in the home stretch. We're so thankful and excited that you were able to participate with us in this journey together. I know Lindsay, I can't speak for you, Lindsay, but I know I had a great time going through this together. And this final section that we want to encourage you to think through is, and it's been a theme throughout the other modules as well, is not only are you the sole exclusive sharer of your story, we want you to think about others who might be able to share your story with you together. Kind of like co-creating, kind of like what we talked about, creating together. What we realized in our research that is incredibly powerful is that not only are you the storyteller, but what is powerful is that when you have others around you can tell the story with you together. Because you can't be in every situation all the time. And when you have others around you that are able to tell that story, it's really powerful when a sea of voices goes and shares what you are doing, what you're about. Yeah. And so what we want to encourage you to do is find your storytellers. Find the people that really understand and believe in what you are doing. And encourage them and invite them to be co-laborers with you, to go and share your stories to others. Because when they share your story, it's incredibly powerful. It amplifies your story. It amplifies what you and your ministry is doing. And so we want to encourage you to take some time to find people within your midst who are co-storytellers with you.
You won't always be able to control who your fellow storytellers are, but this is just a moment to think intentionally about some people you want to make sure are thinking creatively, inventively, and intentionally about telling the story of your community. This was part of our Leading Collaboratively section, where making sure we feature other people and let them tell the story in their own ways, in their own language, would be really important. But we invite now some intentionality about finding your storytellers and equipping your storytellers.
Now, Lindsay, I know you have a story about one of our new worshiping community leaders who was able to find someone else who could be their storyteller. We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, this was an unexpected storyteller emerging from a most unexpected situation. Rafael Viana believes the golden key to vitality in new worshiping communities is seeing and being seen. So he spends more time making videos, writing newsletters, making calls, showing up in people's lives, delivering Brazilian cheese bread, communicating well. He does this more than anyone else I know. He's taught himself to make videos on Adobe Premiere, which is what we've been using for this accelerator. And he tells the community stories, and he invites others to do the same. It took over 1 year for the discernment team, including Raphael and Yvette, to finally figure out where they were being called, which part of Atlanta were they to start a new worshiping community in. We'd done that kind of community exploration with so many other communities. This time it took 3 communities before we finally found the right place. But after months of searching, we knew it was Lawrenceville. So Raphael and I went to one of the Presbyterian churches in Lawrenceville to ask if this new community could meet in their building. This happened to be the oldest church in our presbytery, Fairview Presbyterian Church, and it is filled with good people, most of whom are over the age of 60 and who have poured in on this building, not just making a wonderful community, but creating a beautiful, sweet space. So they were understandably concerned about sharing space and what that might mean in terms of wear and tear. They didn't have more energy or money to pour into the building. And so one particular elder on session was vocal. This surprised no one, since his Facebook feed was filled with posts that indicated that he might not like non-English speaking people such as those who make up the On the Way community. But in the end, they voted yes, and this elder decided he would keep an eye on things by being a liaison between the 2 communities. When On the Way met, he was there. When On the Way cleaned up, he was there. Raphael took him to breakfast every week. They met for coffee every week. This man's posts on Facebook stayed anti-immigrant, but he started helping them set up and take down before and after worship and after the weekday music school. He started showing up early to help out in the ways that he could, and often he was the first one there long before others. He volunteered, he and his wife, to pay the contribution toward utilities that On the Way needs to make. And they have paid it monthly now for over 2 years. This man still spreads anti-immigrant sentiment online, but somehow he is now also the champion for On the Way, a community of Spanish-speaking immigrants that meet in the Fairview Church building. He's taken with this energetic, beautiful community. He knows the people by name. He tells their stories. He speaks up at session meetings and suggests combining worship services, fellowship hours, potlucks, all between the two services. He has wondered out loud if God will one day call Fairview to transition to a Spanish-speaking church. He has become one of On the Way's storytellers, and it opens doors for the community and points to the wonderful work God is doing in the world. He has a hearing that some others might not have. So find your storytellers, share your stories. You frame the narrative first, but let others share what they see. Ask them to do it. Teach them to do it. It is spreading good news. It's actually spreading gospel in a world that needs it.
What an amazing story that was. It's just a testament to us how God works in the most mysterious and incredible ways, where God will find storytellers in places that you may not even expect. And that's what we want to encourage you, is to mine your network, mine your community for these incredible storytellers, because they will be able to amplify your voice, amplify what you are doing. And these storytellers are all around us. Probably the primary place you can find your storyteller is right within your community, your worshiping community, whether they are your church attendees or members. But there are other places that you can find your voices.
We'd like to encourage you to think about when you can build in even some practice for your folks at telling the stories of your community, of what God has been doing through one person's life or another person's life. Practicing this at leadership team meetings, giving some intentionality to it here, there, calling forth the voice of people in your community. Really kind of huge. But it's not, as Peter said, it's not only you and your community that needs to do this. Often people can get a foot in the door by hearing from somebody outside of your community who can tell a fantastic story of what is happening within it. Make sure your presbytery executive is on board. If you can build a relationship, please do. If you don't think you can, remember Raphael's story and just give it a try. But if you can tell stories of what's happening in your community to people who then go tell stories elsewhere, that can be such a blessing in disguise, because like Martha and Aisha said at the very beginning, stories are one of the primary means that gospel is shared. And gospel, evangelion, it's just good news. And who doesn't need to hear good news about people's lives changing?
In addition to those in your community, as well as your executive presbyter, we want to encourage you to find storytellers within your broader network, people that you collaborate with, your peers, your mentors, your friends, because you cannot be everywhere at all times. But what I've discovered is that these people become some of the greatest advocates for what we are doing at 4 Points. And they're telling our stories to people that I don't even realize that they're telling their stories to. And so we want to encourage you, mine your community, mine your network to find people who can really be your voice, your megaphone, an amplifier of what you are doing, because then they are going to be the ones that are telling the story of what you do in equally powerful ways.
Even fellow new worshiping community leaders, perhaps in your area or that you are in a cohort with, these can be good storytellers.
We want to take a moment now to hear from one of our new worshiping community leaders, someone that you're probably familiar with now through these modules. But we want to share with you how Sam really encourages and cultivates his community to tell the story about what they do.
Every semester, we wrote a letter. We just published the e-letter for the donors and then the friends of ministry. And then I just summarized, and then I just wrote down the summary of the ministry for that semester. So what we did and what we experienced, how we learned. And then end of the letters, so I just invited some of students from Oikos, and then I ask them to share what they learned and what Oikos means to them. So usually we share our story through the e-letter, and then definitely, obviously, we have Facebook and Instagram, so that the people can just consume the instant message, instant images as we are doing some ministry. But at the end of the semester, we summarize our ministry with a photo and a story of the students.
I think finding your storytellers is probably one of the more underrated aspects of being a new worship community leader. I can share a couple people that have shared our story. One is people within my community, people within my church. There was this one particular young lady who's been coming to our church now for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And she hadn't been going to church for a while. And she came to our church and was really impressed and blown away by what we are doing and really jumped in right away. She joined our worship community, she joined our worship team, and she was so excited about everything that was happening within our church. Next thing you know, her entire household starts to come to our church within a few months. Her roommates, she had 2 other roommates, and both of them came to our church. And we asked them, hey, how'd you come to our church? And what they both told us is that our roommate came home and was so ecstatic and impressed by what's happening here, we had to come and check it out for ourselves. Another person that has been our storyteller is a friend of mine who is out in California. He's also a pastor. He also planted a new worship community many, many years ago. And every time someone from his community leaves Southern California and moves out to Georgia, he always sends them to our church. And the reason why he sends them to our church is that he knows what we're about. But not only does he know what we're about, but he tells his congregants about what we do and shares our story with them so that when they come to Atlanta, they are immediately able to come to our community and know what we're about because someone has already done the work, the heavy lifting of telling our story. Mm-hmm. And so there are just a couple of additional illustrations and stories about others who could share your story and how it really magnifies. It really is something that is amplified in terms of you being able to tell your story when others come alongside of you and are your storytellers.